Now live. Welcome aboard, boys. We've got a very special guest on Fish Talk Daily, Mr. Stephen Barton. Stephen, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself, man. What you've done and where you going, and everybody knows you
Oh,
anyway. Go ahead.
yeah, I can do that. Yeah, whenever we do these lives, you kind of got to wait till the whole audience gets here. It's always a challenge to get everybody in the room.
Yeah,
So we'll do this. We'll talk about the same things kind of a million times, but that's what we do anyways. So I'm Stephen Bardin. I am a fisheries biologist, just like Shan. I started my career in 2006 working at a little fish farm, Central Texas, and the guy that owned that farm passed away in 2009. His name was Harold Arms. He was my mentor. When he passed away, I started my own company in 2010 while I was in grad school. Started a lake management company, and I took a path that not many take. I hear Shan talking about how hard it is. My company doesn't do aquatic plant control. We don't haul fish. Like everything that you can make money doing, we don't do those things. We manage fisheries, and we do it at a very high level. You could say I'm lucky where we live. We're in Central Texas, and I basically live like if you're in the oil fields and you're going to drive east towards DFW, I live where the trees start. And
okay.
if you're in DFW and you're going to drive towards the oil fields, I live right where it quits raining. So I'm like right there where everybody wants to be. You're out of town. It's a pretty great little spot. Started that company in 2010 and still own and operate it. I've got a couple of fisheries biologists, Canyon and Tommy, that handle most of the day-to-day work. A bunch of fish heads that are either in school, in grad school, just graduated, that work as our fisheries technicians and help us out just executing projects every day. And then in 2017, Gary Klein and I started a company called Black Bass Stewardship Group. We didn't officially launch it. We just, we knew we were building a business and we were doing a lot of market research. He's co-founder of Major League Fishing. So one of the first clients that we got was Major League Fishing. We built Black Bass Stewardship Group as basically a cause marketing company. Like we want to do good conservation work across the country. We want to bridge the gap between science and anglers and industry, and be kind of the thought leader. So we started putting that together. So I work with Major League Fishing and have basically since Bass Pro Tour started in 2019, travel the country, Shan, just basically preaching the gospel of we need to be partners. We need to work together. Anglers, scientists, um, but also there's a lot of communication barriers between that, and so we work to kind of overcome those. Do a lot of habitat work. Whenever you're talking about major reservoirs in the United States, habitat's the one thing we can all agree on, because reservoirs are aging. So it's an easy gateway drug to get everybody in the same room, get us working, getting our hands dirty on the same project, and then go from there. You find out real quick whenever you're building habitat and you're putting it out in a barge and all those things that you have a lot more in common than you have in different, and that really helps. So get to work with great people across the United States, all of our fisheries biologists, a lot of good anglers, and then I've been, yeah, whenever it comes to organizations, man, I've been the president of our Texas chapter American Fisheries. I've served on a ton of boards, Friends of Reservoirs, Aquatic Plant Management Society, and I just finished up on kind of the steering committee for that Black Bass 2025. So, brother, anything you want to chat about, I'm here for you.
Well, that is cool, man. I have to say it's very impressive that you can run a fisheries only private company. I never got there. I unfortunately had to do all the things you mentioned you don't do is what I spent my time, earning money doing.
Right.
And since I wasn't a managing fisheries. I'd still be managing fisheries only if I could have gotten there. I burned out and got tired of getting around pesticides and just all that other stuff that really wasn't any fun at all. And just kept, I still have clients. I still have a few people I consult with and help with their fisheries. But I can definitely attest to the lack of knowledge, I guess, and there just seems to be a separation between scientists and the anglers. And I know you catch it every day. I catch it every day. Just for lack of a better term, just a lot of negativity sometimes. And
a lot of that, in my perspective, comes from the fact that, you've been to an AFS meeting. We go in, we, maybe for our state chapter, we've got 250 people that'll show up. You've got 70 presentations over 2 days. A lot of cutting edge science that happens. And, we sit down for 12 to 15 minutes to listen to, whoever that professional is. We ask them 2 or 3 questions. We move on to the next one. But we do it in a closed room. We don't really invite anglers in. And, you do that over 40 or 50 years. Hell, American Fisheries Society is 155 years old. You think that our problems started yesterday with social media, or you think our problems started 155 years ago?
Exactly.
And it's not their fault. That was the best way to get the information out at the time. But a lack of communication between those two groups builds a, kind of a chasm that it's hard to get over. It's hard to speak the same language. It's hard to build trust whenever they don't hear what we're researching until it becomes an issue. Then when something you research becomes an issue, you sound like you're saying, hey, here's what is wrong. Sit down, shut up, listen to me. Where if you could have involved them in the beginning, maybe you wouldn't have got that issue, or maybe they would trust you whenever you say, here's what we're seeing.
That's what drives me, man. I titled this Aquatic Biologist and it's kind of developing into exactly what I wanted it to be. I wanted to have a collection of people,
right?
Since I'm not really doing it in the field anymore, not doing that stuff, and just to keep talking about what I like to talk about, and also help promote other scientists, younger folk, a younger generation of people, to maybe they won't have the same problems that you and I have had.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. And I'm lucky in the fact that I have been able to build a group of biologists that work for me that get to go out and manage the lakes every day. Because I get to hand train them, I get to work through their problems, and often I unfortunately have to preach at them. Back in my day, this is how we did that, but it's pretty cool. And then at the same time, like, I often reflect on everything they're doing, and I'm like, guys, I used to get to do that. I used to get to be on the water, 200 days a year and electrofish. And my staff, we, like I said, we're pretty unique. They come to a client's, like, they each get assigned a client. And so they go to a client or two every day. But whenever they get to that client's place, they've got a management plan that they're executing on. And part of that is they fish the lakes for 3 hours. Every day they're fishing for 3 hours because they're building a management report that says, here's how you fish the lake. One of the things, to me, where we have failed as an industry is we really don't think about how people are experiencing our work. And I gave the first plenary at Black Bass 2025, 8 a.m., full room. It was supposed to be Gary Klein's spot, but he had a tournament, couldn't make it. And so they asked me if I would do it. And that's the topic I came up with, is how do people experience your work on a day-to-day basis? What we do in fisheries, there's only certain ways that people experience it. A positive would be they get on the water and they catch a fish. hopefully that's a good quality fish, and hopefully they catch a lot of them. A negative would be a whole list of other things, starting with they don't catch a fish. Well, our approach in my company is let's make sure that we minimize the negatives and let's let them experience our work. Often, we have a lot of absentee owner clients. They don't actually get to fish their lakes very many times in a year. But if they can be sitting at their desk on a Tuesday morning trading stock or about to go, do a consult or whatever and get a text of an 8-pound fish and say, look what we just caught on your lake, they get excited, they get jazzed up about what we're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have a lot of more fishermen that pay attention to this than I do pond owners,
Mm-hmm.
which is surprising to me. How and during that 3 hour period, how do your guys fish that lake? How do y'all go about that?
Yeah, that's great. First thing they do is they put their fish traps out. So start your day, put your fish traps out. Some lakes, I mean, we manage lakes, and I would say from as small as an eighth of a surface acre up to 2,500 surface acres. We manage the largest private fishery in the U.S. So you have to approach them slightly different depending on what they are.
Mhm.
Uh, all of our lakes start with a process of they're mapped. We get a topographic map using Biobase. So they've got a little bit of knowledge of the fishery beforehand. But depending, a small lake, they're literally going to beat the bank like any other angler. Now they're
Mhm.
going to vary their presentations or lures. Each of them carry 3 to 4 rods, so they have to where they're trying to catch sunfish, uh, what we would call recruit size bass, moderately, pre-adults, and then all the way up to larger fish. They're really not trying to catch trophy fish and showcase them. That's just a byproduct of what could happen. But they're doing the harvest work as well. So they have on their hip, they have a Bubba scale. We use the Pro Series scale now, and then they have a measuring board, a 30-inch measuring board that whenever they catch a fish, they put it in there. Every client has a chart. It's like a Google sheet, and so they log whatever they're doing. But in that sheet, they'll start logging links, weights, of course, what the species was. It'll self-calculate relative weight.
Nice.
They know what the harvest reg is, so then they'll mark it as a harvested fish or non-harvested fish. If it's a harvested fish, do they pull an otolith? If it's a non-harvested fish and we're going to release it, do we tag it? If so, what is its tag number? So they do that for every single fish. Then we log those so that we can keep up with how many fish did we harvest, what was our catch per effort. We then put a bait. What bait did we catch it on? We link it to the company that it came from so that if they want to jump on Tackle Warehouse and get it, go for it. Um, you got to make this whole process as easy as possible.
That's really smart, man, because that was a learning curve for me. I would go fish the lake and do fine, but like you said, sometimes your client might not
Mm-hmm.
be as good a fisherman, and I
Yep.
found myself to be, for lack of a better term, a guide to their own lake sometimes
Yeah.
and helping them out.
I learned that in 2009. I had a client that called. It's a 4-acre lake, but it used to be a 2-acre lake. So then there's a fake dam where they expanded it, and now they built the second half.
Hmm.
And we would electrofish it, and Shan, we would hit double-digit fish like every other electrofishing survey. And
Wow.
we typically do 2 surveys a year. We do a spring and a fall for two
Yeah.
different reasons. We can discuss that in a little bit. Um, but every other survey, we would hit 1 to 3 double-digit fish, but we'd always hit 6 to 8 pound fish, always.
In a 4 acre pond.
And oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And
Nice.
it's Texas. It's different. Our growing season's longer. We don't have fertility issues like you guys have. Like
Yeah.
it's slightly simpler, especially as you get west. I mean, our hardnesses are 250s, our alkalinities are 180s. You don't really
Hmm.
have to fertilize. Like it's easier. But
I think you're being very modest, but go ahead.
he called and he was complaining. Man, it's been months since I've caught a fish. There's something wrong. We've had fish kills. Whatever it might be. So I say, I'll bring the electrofishing boat and we'll go out and show you.
Mm-hmm.
Electrofish, go out and show him. Catch double-digit fish. He's on the boat. We get back and we're standing at the dock and he's just pissed off. And I said, I said who he was and I was like, hey man, let me fish the lake. And he's like, all right, great. And I was like, but you give me your rod. Show me what you've been fishing with.
Yeah.
And he had a 1/2 ounce bullet weight, Carolina rigged, with a DT 15.
Okay.
And he's just dragging the bottom and not getting the bite. And I learned real quick, doesn't matter how good you are at this job, you got to be good at bridging that gap of taking the guy who maybe isn't an experienced angler, has all the money in the world to buy whatever you need to be successful, and also doesn't really have time. So time is a big value to them. So if I can figure out how to put the right equipment in your hands to where every 10 to 15 minutes you're maximizing the opportunities, I don't get a negative phone call on, hey, I'm not catching fish. I'm the one that gets a text message on Saturday morning that says, look at this.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. You mentioned electrofishing in the spring and the fall. Let's touch on that. I think that's important.
Yeah, so for every management client, I don't do it for everybody, but for every management client, we build in 2 surveys a year. Both of those surveys, we run a bio-based map while we're doing it. And that allows me to look at in the spring, what is the lake like before vegetation grows? It allows me to assess what the fish are going to be coming into the year to do. And especially like if it's my first year with a client, that's whenever I want to build the plan. I want to look at them at their optimal condition. They just came out of winter. They've started feeding. Habitat really isn't a limiting issue. We don't have any vegetation, or we have a very minimal amount of vegetation. So the fish are easy to catch. The fall survey kind of contrasts that. In the fall, I'm looking at the fish basically at their worst. They're coming out of summer. They've been stressed. It's been hot. I mean, dude, you got to realize we're having 95-degree water temperature in the summer. We got a thermocline setting up at 6 foot. You can have really rough summers, or we have drought. We experience every other year a big drought. So you get to see the fish at their worst. You also get to see vegetation at its worst. And when you map it, now you know the good from the bad, and you can build a true plan. And it allows me to write the plan for next year. So I kind of use these dual surveys, right? I want to see how good it can be, how bad it can be, and then build a plan to look at in its best, how do I make it better? And then what did I fail on all summer long? So these fish didn't come into fall and thrive. And what is my parachute going to be to get me through winter, so that next year I can have a better execution plan? And we do that for every single client. And so like what it looks like for our staff, they take 12 months of reports from being there once a month. They take 2 surveys. They build a PowerPoint that's like, here's where we started at the beginning of the year. Here's everything we did. Here's how the fish changed throughout the year, relative weights, whatever it is. Here's the harvest we were doing, the largest fish we caught. Give them the things they want to see. Here's where we failed, things we could have done better, and here's how we're going to execute next year. And we do that for every single client.
Yeah, this is great, man. I think it's important that people understand, what it is we're doing out there, because they don't get it, and then bringing it into like a PowerPoint type presentation. So uh, all your businessmen, you're again communicating with them in a way that they're familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, you can write. I started out doing it, man, 14-page reports, 15-page reports,
They
and
don't
all the
read them.
graphs. And I would spend a lot of time on them, dude. I would electrofish for an hour, and then
Yeah.
8 hours later, I'm still writing the same report,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm writing them all fresh. And I went on a trip with Bob Lusk. He was doing the Bill Dance Signature Lakes at the time,
Yeah.
and asked me if I'd ride along with him, and we would go look at like 12 lakes. And so we did it over like 4 days. But at night we'd be in the hotel, and I just asked him. I was like, "Hey man, can I write some of your reports?" And he was kind of apprehensive, but he's like, "Yeah, but I do it different." And what Bob did, I mean, you've read upon Bob's magazine, you know the man. He wrote as a narrative story.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he was having a conversation, and he always kept them like 2 pages, and they'd have the same graphs in the same places, and they were 2 pages. It was just a narrative story. And Bob is the very best, in my opinion, at vision casting what a fishery could be. He can stand on the dock with anybody and be like, "Here's what I hear from you, and here's what this could be." And he can just vision cast and sell people on this is how great this place could be. And he did that in this narrative story, and I
Mm-hmm.
liked it, but it wasn't quite my style.
Mm-hmm.
My style is more, let me simplify this down to a couple of images and a couple of words that relate to what we actually need to get done. And for our client, our model is not for everybody. Our model is for somebody who says, "I want to give you the reins, and I want to enjoy the process." I don't want to be in the process. I don't want to be doing it myself. I want you to do it and us enjoy it.
Right. Yeah, I met Bob in the let's see, probably around 1996,
Yep.
and he was the opposite of what you encounter with most biologists, which is a
Mm-hmm.
competition type of deal. Bob was the opposite of that. Bob was
Yeah.
very welcoming. Bob helped me in many ways. For anybody who doesn't know Bob Lusk, he started Pond Boss. It was a magazine. I'm assuming the magazine's still around. I don't get it anymore. I need to order that again if it's still around. But it came to
So,
me for
so the
years and years.
magazine still exists, and yeah, so you got it probably without ever subscribing. I got it without
Yeah,
subscribing. There's one thing
yeah, I
Bob
did.
does. He sends a copy to all the lake managers around the country that he respects.
Yeah,
Whenever your name's coming up, he's seeing you, he's seeing your work. He puts you on the list, and you get a copy.
yeah, he did
And
that to me for years. Hmm.
stand up
Good.
dude. And he's still doing it. He's retired, but he's still doing the magazine. He now does
Yeah.
a Facebook Live every Wednesday night. We're probably bumping up against him right now, actually.
Oh, all right on.
Yeah, but he does a Facebook Live. He does a good job, and he tells a lot of stories, man. That's one part about this is there's a lot we can learn from people like Bob, and there's a lot people can learn from guys like me and you. That's why I try to tell my staff all the time. I joke with them and I say, remember, everything that I do and everything that you do, I used to do alone.
Yeah,
Whenever it was
yeah.
just me, man, I did all those jobs. So listen to me. I've got things I can teach you. I got shortcuts.
Right, absolutely. And I think it's important too to note that every single biologist has a different experience and can be
Yep.
learned from. You know,
Yep.
if they're willing to talk with you and teach about what they've experienced, all those experiences are unique because every single fishery is unique. Every
Correct.
single part of the country is managed differently. You
Yep.
know, this isn't a cookie cutter type of thing that people want to make it into. They want to make it black and white and super easy. And I can read a post on the internet and now I know everything that you know. And that's really not how it is at
Man,
all.
the first time I met Bill Shedd, Bill Shedd's family is who started SeaWorld, and that's also who owns AFTCO right now.
Oh, okay.
And Casey Shed runs APCO, but Bill's his father. And the first time I met Bill, I was just having a discussion about fisheries conservation across the country, and deep theoretical conversation. And Bill said that they, as an APCO, had a responsibility, and it started with the SeaWorld stuff, but a responsibility to go into the marine environments and do conservation work. And whenever they entered that space, he found that universally across the entire planet, the issues were the same for marine environments. And then whenever they started APCO and they wanted to enter the freshwater space, they took that same model and they went across the country and they found out every freshwater fisheries issues are different and it's
Yep.
all local. He said it's
Yep.
much more difficult to figure out how to participate in conservation efforts in our public resources because every fishery is so different and their challenges are different.
Absolutely. Very nuanced.
Yep. Yep.
You mentioned the black bass meeting that you had earlier this year. I definitely want to talk about that and some of the things that was shared there.
Yeah, Black Bass 2025 was a unique opportunity for us. Apparently, they had the first one in 1975. They had the second one in 2000, and this was just the third one. It was held in conjunction with the American Fisheries Society 155th anniversary meeting in San Antonio at the beginning of August of this year. And I was kind of brought in, I would say late, but like 18 months before the meeting. Uh, One of our biologists here in the state, Tom Lang, that works at the Texas Freshwater Fisheries Center, as their director, contacted me and asked if I could join the planning committee. He needed help with really the fundraising sponsorship side, and knew that I could provide some insight into that and really gear the meeting towards. Uh, it turned out we geared the meeting towards involving anglers in the industry and kind of this new media YouTube platform. And he was hoping I could bring that, and so that was really my focus. But I got to be involved with the entire planning. So there were a couple people, Dave Phillip and Mark Ridgway, who were at the 2000 meeting that were then on this planning committee and really were spearheading it. But there was nobody there from 1975, not a single person from 1975. The meeting was attended by about 300 biologists.
Nice.
Those biologists, primarily are agency biologists or somebody who's in research, university based. There wasn't a lot of students like traditional AFS meetings. Probably a couple reasons for that. Of course, it was in August. It was right before the semester started.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the talks were professional-based talks. So that really limited student participation, but there were still some students. And then we had from the private sector, I attended, Bob attended, Dave Beasley attended, Troy Goldsby attended, the Edges, Red Hills Fishery. I'm going to forget some people. Solitude Lake Management, Matt Ward was there. Yeah, so we had probably, let's say, like 8 companies, which for an AFS meeting, I'm used to being the only private sector person in the room, or maybe one of them, 2 or 3. And so I look at it as a big success, because whenever we start talking about these scientific meetings, our work is not usually highlighted, for several reasons. And part of that is we're fairly secretive about our trade secrets. And so it makes it, it makes it to where you don't want to share everything all the time. But the Black Bass meeting, Dave started the meeting up with, let's just forget every bias you have. Let's forget what you already knew, and come into this meeting. And why don't you open your mind and think of a perspective where somebody here is about to teach you something you don't know. And then I got up into this plenary about how do people experience your work, and I did it from kind of my perspective, on building two companies and building those companies in the private sector, which is different than 90% of that room's perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
also from my ability to uh, every single year, I do a survey of the MLF anglers. So I survey those anglers on conservation topics and where do they want work to be done and what do they think is wrong with our fisheries and what is their perspective. And I gave some of those results. Like 98.5% of MLF anglers believe that fish stocking is the number one thing that we can do to improve our fisheries. And, I said that in front of the entire room. And we know as scientists that there's not many systems that just need more bass stocked in them. There's some genetic reasons why you might stock bass. There may be a situational reason where you have a bad year class or poor recruitment and you need to supplement a certain size class. But universally, fish stocking is not what we need. But the challenge is, how do you take somebody with that perspective and work with them to understand how we can work together to make a fishery better? And so one of the things that I just brought up was that every single person in that room would say fish stocking is not needed, and you cannot stock enough fish to be for those large systems, for those reservoir systems. You can't stock enough fish to actually be effective at making a change. So then my question is, why are you so resistant? If it's not going to change the system, why be resistant?
Mm-hmm.
Why not use that as an opportunity to create community around your own work? And as a
Right.
platform, bring the fish truck out, put in the 10,000 fish, have a conversation about what harvest needs to look like, what relative weights look like, what aquatic plant control or habitat work needs to look like. And, that raised a couple eyebrows right away. And
Mm-hmm.
then Stephen Cook went after me. He's a professor from Carleton University in Canada. And Stephen, I'm positive this is a fact, but he has written more papers than any other scientist about black bass ever. And he's not that much older than us, but he's just a researcher.
Yeah.
And he gave a different perspective. His perspective is from that of somebody who's researching um, those fish in systems where maybe they are just as harmful as they are, important as a recreational fish. And then we also had Stephen Quinn, who is a biologist and a former editor in Fisherman. And so we really and then we had Doug Austin, former AFS um, director, give the last presentation that morning. So we had this group that just has a lot of different perspective, and that set the tone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took a break for 2 hours. We were with AFS and they had some things that they blocked off on their calendar where they just asked us not to have presentations because you could go across the street. So we set the tone and we took a break. And people went to the AFS meeting. They came back that afternoon, and then we started. We had 4 rooms. Each room had like a theme. So a lot of people spent, guys that we know spent time in the trophy bass room. And there would be a presentation every 15 minutes, 12-minute presentation plus 3 minutes of questions. And like I said, most of those are professionals. And we did that from 1 o'clock till 5:45. All 4 of those rooms running simultaneously, 143 presentations over a day and a half.
Wow.
The next day we did the same thing. We did those presentations, 4 rooms, just bang, 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 knock them out. Uh, I gave 3 presentations. I gave a presentation on the use of forward-facing sonar on an electrofishing boat, talking about number one that it can be used, and then what does it do to your efficiency. And I talked about that. I talked about some statistical analysis of participation trends in MLF tournaments over the past 20 years. And then I did just an update on standard practices we use in private lake management. And those were the three I gave during that day and a half. Then the next day, we had kind of keynote addresses. So we had the first half of the day focused on kind of the future of our ecological needs, whether that is identifying these species of bass that kind of live in these small endemic areas, whether that's climate change, whether that's angler use. And then the afternoon session was all about partnerships. How do we build partnerships? And I gave a presentation about, what we've done at MLF. And then the final day, we did roundtable discussions, and that was the day that, like, if I could go back and tell you to come to one day, that's the day to be there.
Yeah.
8 topics. You basically said, I want to do whatever topic. You would sit down at a table, you'd be with 10 other people, and y'all would talk about that topic for the next 3 hours. And you'd be trying to answer a question. And we framed it as you were actually trying to come up with a project, an end result project. And then after that session was over, you moved to a different table and you addressed another question. And then after lunch, all the people who addressed your question, because there was actually 4 tables for each question, so all 4 of those then got together in a room and had a discussion of what did we all come up with. I'll give you an example. So the first question, I was a moderator the whole time, but the first question that I moderated was, what do we want professional tournaments to look like in the future? I had 2 fish chiefs, I had district biologists, I had 2 angler organizations. I had 2 angler organizations. I had a media person. So I had like a diverse group, right? We let everybody go around the table. They all agreed catch, weigh, and release is a great format. It's what tournaments should look like in the future, but it's hard to get there. It's hard to understand how do we get there. Right. So after 3 hours of discussion, here's what we came up with. Professional tournaments in the future need to not alter our bass populations. That was just our broad, that's what they need to look like. They need to not alter our bass populations.
Mm-hmm.
So then my group and 3 others after lunch get together. And we each stand up and we say, here's what we came up with. And damn it, Shan, all 4 groups came up with some version of that.
Yeah.
Nobody came up with, we don't need forward-facing sonar, we don't need to have live wells. What they came up with is, we don't want tournaments to alter our populations.
Right.
And that was the coolest part, was because you got 40 people that are sitting at 4 different tables. How did they all come up with the same thing?
Yeah.
And then from that, what we ended up doing is writing down a project. And the last hour of the day, we assigned people to go up in front of everybody and pitch that project. And now what we're doing after this meeting is we came away with 18 projects. And we're going through those 18 projects, and we're taking all the money that we collected from sponsorship, and we're going to fund those projects.
Nice.
And so we'll see. We may not fund all 18. The steps basically right now look like we've got all 18. We know who spoke. We're taking all the committee members that put the meeting together, and we're kind of assigning a project to each one, so then we can go back to them and kind of coach them a little bit and see if they actually want to execute on it. And some of them are really simple. Others are extremely pie in the sky, very complicated. So, maybe we can get half of them. Who knows how many we actually get to fund, but there's going to be actionable things that come from this. And then we also identify that, man, just as a industry, we don't have a consolidated voice that speaks and says, like when it comes to delayed mortality, this is one of the things I brought up. When it comes to delayed mortality, Nobody can stand up and say delayed mortality is this all the time because the systems are different. But can't we all agree that there is a temperature variable to delayed mortality in tournaments?
Mhm.
If we can agree on that, then can we not start building some sort of understanding that at certain times, if you choose to have a tournament, your delayed mortality is going to increase to this? And whose responsibility is that? We
Right.
need just one group that says, "Hey, we'll be the voice of that," and we identify like every subject. That it came down to the same thing. Like we just need somebody who's going to be the voice of it.
Sure. That's very positive to me, man, because it seems like now if that's what happened, it seems like that the research into delayed mortality and tournament mortality is getting out there
Yeah,
somehow.
well, here's the problem, man. That's what a lot of people would say. Hey, we need to do another research. We need to know what the delayed mortality is at Grand Lake. We need to know what the mortality was at the St. Lawrence. And part of me says, great, let's fund another research project so we can figure it out for that specific water body. But at the same time, I pulled 80 papers that have been written in the last 20 years about delayed mortality
Right.
and handed them to my staff. Because after the meeting, I came back and I printed 80 research articles and handed them to my staff. And I said, by the end of this year, you will have a graph that says if temperature is X, mortality is predicted to be Y.
Yeah.
For
Awesome.
smallmouth and largemouth. We will
Yeah.
have that in our hands from these 80 papers.
That's what I've noticed, man. It seems like the research is very redundant.
Yep.
They keep going over and over and over the things that's already been proven. All right, we've proven that you're killing fish, right? Now, how do we fix that? And
Correct.
yeah, it's like if you're if you just keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result.
Yep. Yep.
Arkansas Pond Stalkers has a question coming through from the chat. Do you
Gotcha.
think Bassmaster will ever give up the weigh-ins? It seems central to their business model. And see, that's the problem, Arkansas. It's a money-making thing. Like Steven just said, 98% of the MLF tournament guys think that stocking fish is, keys to the city, so to speak, on how we maintain our fisheries health. And I don't agree with that statement, and that's the problem. Then you get is how do I frame it? If you can be very good at fishing and not very good at fisheries management, and the opposite is true. We're sitting with one of the best fisheries managers, right? And he's not going to talk like the fishermen. It's the opposite almost sometimes. So now
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, you look at what Arkansas Pond Stalkers is saying here. Do you think Bassmaster will ever give up the weigh-ins? There's situations, I think, at Lake Fork where regulation doesn't allow them to really do a weigh-in, and they have a workaround around it. They did so for 8 years with Toyota Texas Fest. But that was a community that wasn't willing to change or give them an exemption that made it happen. And then I look at MLF, and on the Bass Pro Tour side, we have an all catch, weigh, and release model. And that's a business decision as well. MLF is selling viewership for their live stream. And they're able to do so because they can get a big enough number to watch, especially in those final minutes of a period. But how the model for tournaments works for especially large organizations is most of the cities or the communities pay the organization to come and put on the event. There's a dollar amount because they know that the organizations are going to buy hotel rooms and food, and there's going to be an economic value to that local community, and they're going to broadcast it. What Bassmaster or anybody who has a live weigh-in, MLF has live weigh-ins on the pro circuit in other leagues. Whenever we go and we sell those events, we're selling the number of people that are going to come to your community for that weekend. Whenever we sell a Bass Pro Tour event, we sell the number of people who are going to come to your community over the next year because they saw you on our broadcast.
Right.
And it's just a different sales model. So the answer to will Bassmaster change their business model is based on how you, as a fisherman, consume their product and how you interact with the community. Are you showing up for a weigh-in, or are you showing up 3 months later with your family and fishing the reservoir and being in the community?
Right.
Because how that community sees that value is going to drive the economic model that gets the tournaments to do what they're going to do. Either that, or it'll be the Lake Fork model, where the agency and the regulation drives it.
Right. I was fortunate enough to do an interview with the FWC head guy, Jason Dotson, last year, and they shut down the tournaments on Orange. You're not having your tournaments out there. It's kind of in its peak for. It has a drought cycle. It sounds like over there that kind of creates a new lake effect, and it's at that peak of trophy bass production, and they shut it down. You're not having your tournament there because of delayed mortality problems that they're having with the tournaments.
Yeah, and then you look at on the 2026 schedule, Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour will host our heavy hitters events on Orange Lake in May.
There you go.
Because we have a small field, you have 24 anglers that are going to compete per day or less. They're going to be caught and immediately released. We average 24 seconds of out of water time for the fish. We won't for Florida, maybe they'll ask us to. We can collect a DNA sample from certain size classes of fish. We do that for other states, and we do that for ourselves. And then I provide the catch data, time, location, GPS location of that fish, habitat type, depth range in 5-foot increments. We provide that back to the agency. So what the agency get is like a krill survey on steroids, because they get the weight of the fish, where it's located at that specific time, and they get it from the best anglers in the world. So you are going to see those fisheries that are locked. Hell, the entire Coosa River almost became this last year. Maybe some of your audience doesn't know. Auburn University published a study that 4 grad students worked on, and it was in Neely Henry. I'm going to summarize. They basically proved that when we go electrofish and we catch a 16-inch fish, that fish is older and grows at a slower rate than the same 16-inch fish brought in from an angler. And on average, it's like a year and a half.
Wow.
And that's because anglers are catching the fastest growing, most aggressive fish.
Sure.
They're bringing them to a weigh-in site. And on Neely Henry, Alabama bass, I'm not going to get the number right, so just theorize here. You can read the research if you want. Alabama rice, all of the Alabama bass in the reservoir in Neely Henry were caught at least twice. And all of the largemouth were like 1.5 times.
Wow.
So then they have delayed mortality on top of that. And the delayed mortality numbers were pretty scary. Higher than the 30% average that we like to discuss often. And so Alabama came to the organizations and said, we are going to go to a protective slot model like Lake Fork, and you are no longer going to be able to do tournaments unless they're catch, weigh, and release.
Interesting.
They backed off on that, but they backed off on that, I would guess, temporarily.
Yeah.
Because the research, those things are only going to become more visible to us now because we're able to do odorless to age fish, but now with spines, they're able to age fish in a non-lethal manner.
Yeah.
If you're able to manage to pull a spine and release a fish, dude, you're opening up a whole new way of understanding that fishery. They're also able to do genetics and family lineage on these fish, so they can tell you, like, in Texas, they can tell you this fish was stocked this year from this mother whose grandmother was this fish.
Huh.
And when they start doing that, if stocking is working or not working, it's gonna open up a lot of doors for us.
Absolutely. That's amazing. One thing that I want to touch back on, go way back. You said you did a presentation about the forward facing on an electrofishing boat. I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, in 2022, um, I put a no, it's 2021. I put a Gen 1 Lowrance forward-facing unit on the front of my electrofishing boat. Now, you know what an electrofishing boat is, but I'm going to explain it to the audience. You have a cage on the front of the boat. Most people have two booms, and then you have some sort of electrode that drops into the water. On my boat, I run two straight electrodes. So they're two bars. They have six droppers that are 4 foot long that come off. They're spaced, I think it's every 18 inches, but whatever. It's two of them. On the left side of my boat, on the cage, I put in a bracket with a fiberglass pole, and I mounted the forward-facing transducer on that left side, so it is rigid and it turns with the boat. So you would normally turn it with your trolling motor. Well, it turns whichever direction the boat is. And I did it because the guys that own Biobase had a partnership with Lowrance, and they had been getting calls from fisheries, fisheries professionals across the country asking about, does forward-facing sonar and electrofishing interfere with each other? And the guy from Biobase called me and asked if I would do it, and he said, "You're the only person I know that would be willing to throw that expensive equipment on the front of a boat and just try it." And I was like, "Well, hell yeah, I would." Hell yeah, I would. So we put it on there. So the first thing that happens, we put it on, we get out in the middle of a lake, I down pedal, and you're looking at the screen. I run a 12-inch screen.
Yeah.
And you can see the electrodes in the water, right?
Yeah.
They get super bright when I down pedal.
Really? Okay.
You can see power is on.
Yeah.
I'm talking not like a double intensity. I'm talking like 10x intensity.
Like Vegas Strip intensity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So immediately I'm like, electricity's on. And then you let off the pedal and they stay lit up for about 40 seconds. And then they slowly fade. So I'm like, all right, it works. Nothing caught on fire. Now let's go use it. So forward-facing sonar, you have three. You can set your transducer in landscape, forward, or down.
Right.
I'm not going to remember which one we did first, but I like it in landscape mode. So
yeah, when you turn it sideways and you can see, I do too. Yeah.
Yeah, because where we are, 8 foot or shallower. That's where you electrofish.
Yeah.
So looking forward or down really isn't effective, but looking side to side is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, so the next thing you notice is you will see fish swimming to your sides and out in front of you. And then at some point, for my boat, it was around 30 feet, the fish would start spinning. So I'm 30 feet away from the fish watching them spin. So then, Shan, that means I know the distance, my electrofishing radius of my electricity. Yeah. I know Beautiful. It's on and the radius.
Yeah.
Turn it forward and you can see the same thing up and down. So you get out in deep water and you can watch fish that are either sinking or swimming away.
Right.
So now
you can see how many are running too.
Right. You see what's running. So you can't see the power in the water. What you see is I have a bubble. And mine, I've got the two straights, so it makes like a heart shape. So there's like a gap in the middle where they get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And it is about 8 foot deep. And depending on the fishery, it could be anywhere from 15 to 30 feet out.
Sure.
And then you start watching the fish. And this is what would drive you crazy. Is you start driving, and all of a sudden you see fish running, you see fish spinning, and you start saying, "Hey, there's a big one to the right." Press sure it was your favorite presentation. You're
Yeah,
you're the
I was
dude,
gonna
man.
pull
You're the
that one
dude,
up.
man. You're the dude. I love you to death, brother. You know that. So you see them start spinning, and you're like, "Hey, fish on the right, fish on the right," and the guys on the front of the boat will just be looking, and they'll never see them. Because what I found out is about 90% of the fish sink; they don't come to the surface.
Yeah,
So it drives you nuts because you're trying to be efficient and not biased in your electrofishing, and then all of a sudden you've got a technology that allows you to see fish and just allows you to see how inefficient you really are.
right.
Now the
Yeah,
cool part, like if you had a client and you're like, hey, we need to go get these grass carp out, um, you can go find a grass carp really quick. If you know that distance, you can get them inside that window. You can down pedal. You can pull that fish to the
that's
top,
really
and you
smart, dude. Yeah.
got it.
Wow.
So that's what my presentation. I basically challenged the agencies. We have a lot of agencies who wild catch striped bass or crappie for their brood stock.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to make hybrid stripers, they need striped bass, and those populations are difficult to catch, especially because they typically do it behind dams in current.
Right. And current, not to
This is
mention they
great.
move so fast.
Yeah, this is a great way to get them.
I bet.
In the fall, it's a great way to get tilapia. Um, yeah, in the fall it is. In any other time of year, tilapia are too hard to shock, but in the fall you can do it.
Yeah.
Species like paddlefish, where you maybe don't see them in your sampling very often, you can go target them.
Right.
Uh, of course, removal, like we do a lot of removal of common carp, smallmouth buffalo, even large gizzard shad. You can
Sure.
do that with this technology.
Oh yeah. I didn't even think about that either. That's awesome, dude.
It's useful, and at the same time, um, so it's been on the boat, and I didn't turn it on at all this year, not one time. It
Yeah.
it doesn't change your efficiency. It doesn't change your catch per effort, and so it's just another thing to worry about. Also, mine is like I said, it's hard mounted to the cage, and I have ripped it off a dozen times
Yeah.
because I'll just most of the time it's my fault. I get to the end of the day, I've got power poles on the back of the electrofishing boat, so a lot of times I'll find shade and I'll power pull down. We'll work our fish, and then I'll run back to wherever the truck is, and I'll just slide up on the shore to go get the truck, and I forget the forward facing sonars down, so I just rip it off in the dirt.
Yeah. I could see that. It's just one more thing to break, and it's an expensive thing to break.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
touching on Preston's question though, seriously, what would you
All right, so
biggest message?
Preston
Yeah, coming away
wants to know
from
what my favorite presentation was.
came on live with me. He'll be back on again. What's your favorite presentation at Black Bass 2025?
Shane, was that me or you, bro?
Go ahead.
No, it froze on me. I don't know what you said.
Oh, your video has been freezing a little bit throughout. I'm checking. I'm looking at my Wi-Fi, and I don't think it's on me. So
I have Starlink, so sometimes that gets a little sticky here.
yeah, that does happen. The audio has been fine from my end. Throw up a chat. You guys haven't had any problem with the audio, have you? It's been running clean. It's just been freezing on the video.
Good. Yeah.
But yeah, Preston asked, what was your favorite presentation, or I think the most important presentation from the Black Bass 2025?
I'm going to be honest and tell you that I have a lot of favorites. One of mine was Kyle Williams' presentation about the caloric density study he's doing there in Florida, looking at caloric density of rainbow trout versus gizzard shad versus koi. And he's really seeing some promising things where adult rainbow trout and koi are fairly similar in calories. I do this all the time, and I hate that I do it, but it's how we were taught, and that's what we do. We tell people it takes 10 pounds of forage to gain 1 pound on a bass, 5 pounds to maintain their weight, plus an additional 10 pounds to gain a second pound.
Right.
And you got to eat that in a year. And that comes from a biologic model of 90% loss. It's just a generalized rule. You lose 90% of what you eat. But what it doesn't take into account is how many calories are in that food item. And Kyle is, I mean, he is literally just blending up food items and seeing how many calories are in them. Because what they're trying to do for the state of Florida is start growing 18-pound fish again. And I think that would be really cool to see you guys hitting some trophy-sized fish, like these monster fish again. And it is a lot of calories.
I'm getting audio on the stupid ice machine cut on. I'm going to jump off real quick, 2 seconds, and turn that thing off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Got to do that. I hope that didn't jack with the audio too bad. I do have the background thing turned on, so hopefully it'll edit that out.
No, you're good. So anyways.
Oh, go ahead.
Kyle's was one of my favorites. Caloric density of food items. I think that was really great. One thing we did do during the meeting is we had Preston, Ben Ricks, Ken Duke, Brian Velvick, Guy Echo, Bailey Eggbright. We had them come on stage and do a roundtable discussion on how to interact with media as a biologist, how to get booked on a podcast, what to say, like how to bring your information to the public. Mm-hmm. I thought that was one of the most interactive and probably informative things we did of the whole meeting, because it kind of forced people once again to get a different perspective. It wasn't science-based really at all. But I've already had people reach out to me and ask about, certain podcasts and getting on those. So I think there was a lot to that one that was good. I'll tell you though, Shan, I'm to the point in my career where one of my favorite parts is watching people build on my work or use my data. We had Ryan Gary do a presentation using the MLF fisheries management data, the catch data from this past season, where on the Bass Pro Tour, the anglers were only allowed to use forward-facing sonar for 1/3 of their day. So the day is divided into 2.5-hour periods. So they basically got to pick 2.5 hours when they would use it. And Ryan went through the data and compared every angler to themselves and the field to understand if statistically forward-facing sonar helped them either catch more fish or larger fish. And across the board, size didn't matter at all with or without forward-facing sonar. And in one event of the year, the anglers that used forward-facing sonar caught twice as many bass when they were using it versus when they were not. In every other event in the year, it was either not significant at all, no significant difference, or as a marginal difference. So out of 7 events, only 1 did it really matter.
Right. And I imagine it depends on where the fish are located that time of year.
He doesn't know that yet. He's still working on that. He's looking into a lot of things on what it could have been.
Yeah. Interesting. I wouldn't think it would make that much difference. I think the discussion of going back and forth and arguing about whether it's harming our fisheries or not harming our fisheries it's kind of irrelevant. When you've got 40% mortality from your tournament in the summertime and a bulk of your tournaments are being run in the summertime, to me, you're missing a bigger picture.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Arkansas asked, do you think forward-facing should be used in competitive electrofishing? Oh, probably in competitive fishing is what he meant there.
No, he meant competitive electrofishing. Yeah, he's
competitive electrofishing.
He's burning us right now. He thinks he's on Bass After Dark right now.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, he's trying to burn us. It's okay.
There's no prizes here. Real quick and make sure I didn't miss anybody's question there. Oh, we do have a question about alligators. Do you get alligators in your ponds? And I think that we could broaden that outside sources, outside predators, and how that affects private lake management.
Yeah, I'd love to. We get 4 outside predators. You could call alligators one of those. East Texas alligator are fairly common. Uh, I've got one ranch where I haven't been on the property yet and not seen an alligator. Are they affecting the fisheries? They mainly eat rough fish, so carp, smallmouth buffalo. They eat a lot of predatory birds. You get herrings or stuff on the shoreline. They're going to
Mhm.
consume them. So I don't often count alligators as something that I'm concerned with. We do get cormorants, double-crested cormorants, and we have resident populations as well as migratory populations. And cormorant, studies show somewhere between 30 and 60 fish every single day is consumed by a cormorant, and they're
Oh
eating
wow.
3 to 6 inch fish. That's right in that forage window that we really need those fish, and they're doing
Right.
it, for us over winter months. Um, so they're rough. Um, Kind of a bigger predatory bird though is a pelican. We get pelicans moving in, and the studies on pelicans are more like 300 fish a day, and they will consume fish and then regurgitate them on the shoreline and go again. And so
Ah,
they're a lot rougher on your forage populations. Both of those are controlled by the Migratory Bird Act, where it's a federal offense to take them by lethal means. Except if you're an aquaculture facility, you can get an exemption from that. There is right now in our U.S. House a bill to change that for cormorants and allow private lake managers to assign a take authority um, for managed lakes. So that could change for cormorants soon. We'll see. And the number one predator we have kind of moving across the state right now is the river otter. I didn't see an otter the first 15 years of my career.
right.
There was an article last year in our Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine showcasing the restoration of otters in the expansion beyond their natural range throughout the state and celebrating that conservation success. And that conservation success is a huge detriment to
Yeah.
private lake managers, to the point now where multiple clients we're checking otter traps as part of our routine maintenance. And you
Ah,
know in my opinion, that is one of those tasks that we shouldn't have to do. We
right.
shouldn't have to be trying to control otters. Now in the state of Texas, we're legally allowed to take otters by any means that we deem necessary at any time with
Right.
no regulation. So it couldn't be easier to actually come up with a control method. But the hard part is they're still otters and they're very smart. And if you don't know, an otter is going to target larger, typically female fish, egg laden fish. So we're talking those 5+ pound bass, the ones that we're trying to grow on a daily basis.
Right. My experience with them is really no different than, say, a cat that hunts, doesn't necessarily hunt for food. They
Mm-hmm.
just kill to kill, and they do a lot of killing.
Yep. Yep. They do. They do. Yep. We see
Yeah.
a lot of big sunfish, and they don't eat them. They just kill them.
Yeah. They're just, the few times I've had experiences with them, they just, your bank will be just littered in dead fish
Mm-hmm.
that they just killed. And hooking up is saying it sounds like the pond management is easier up north. I don't know necessarily easier, but definitely, again, like we started it out different. Every place is different. Even across the street from where you're at is a different lake. In the same watershed can be vastly different. Um,
Yep. Well, I mean, up north you have a slower growing season,
mm-hmm,
which also means you have a longer lifespan of your fish.
mm-hmm,
So if you do put yourself in a management strategy where you're maximizing your carrying capacity every year, you stand to have a greater benefit for longer duration.
right.
We have boom and bust and very cyclic populations in the southern parts of the US. I can grow. I mean, if you tasked me with grow me a double digit fish, I can do it in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
it is not going to live past year 6.
Right.
Now,
That was
if
my
you
next question for you. I've noticed that same pattern. I got some fish from Red Hills in one of my example ponds I use online, the primary one, Sugar Hill, and I've seen that
Yep.
pattern, but I didn't have any science behind it, have any research project behind that to back me up. I've just noticed it from field experience. When you get them growing fast, they get very short-lived.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, um, whenever I gave my trophy bass presentation, I started my presentation out with a joke of, I've given this for 20 years basically, and I would like to report that there's no new news, because really nothing has changed in private lake management over the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Very small, minute things. But I did try to explain a theory that I have, and I'll go ahead and try to explain it here for your audience, and you can call BS if you want on me, Shan. So basically,
I don't think so, but go ahead.
no, you can. It's okay if you decide that this isn't that this isn't true. All right, in the last 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
what I would consider the modern era of reservoir management and pond management, there has not been a single fish grown over 20 pounds that is not a Florida bass and fed rainbow trout. Those two things are fact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The biggest fish we've ever seen is 25 pounds, 1 ounce. That was Dottie.
Yeah.
She was foul hooked in 2006.
I remember that.
Lake Dixon is the reservoir that she came from. That's a 69-acre reservoir. That is something that's smaller than my average.
Right.
It has a maximum depth of 80 feet. So it has cold water. It's in California, kind of south central California.
Okay. Yep.
That reservoir was stocked in with pure Floridas beginning in the 70s.
Got it.
So you've got about 35 years of Florida genetic in that reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
Every single year, multiple times, it was stocked with rainbow trout.
Right.
Okay? In 2008, she was found dead, and the California DNR pulled the otolith and estimated her at 17 years old. Okay, so here's where my theory is.
Mm-hmm.
She was 25-1 at age of 15.
Mm-hmm.
That means she grew at a average rate of 1.6 per year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can grow a bass 1.67 pounds per year, you are on the same record growth as the largest fish that ever lived.
Right.
The caveat is you got to get her to live to be 15 years.
Right.
So whenever we talk about lake management, what we're doing wrong is we're trying to grow them too fast.
Yeah.
You got to slow the growth down.
No, I agree.
So what we do, we stock a few more fingerlings initially, so there's a little bit of competition early.
Mm-hmm.
We start harvest instead of waiting till they spawn. We start harvest at year 1. As soon as they get to 10 inches, we start harvesting fish, the poor fish out of the population. We put threadfin shad in, get them to be that 3 to 5 pound range, and we try to hold them there for a little bit before we introduce rainbow trout. And then we are basically managing most of our trophy fisheries at this point with some sort of filler food for the summer months so that we can get to rainbow trout time, and then trying to put the weight on them during the rainbow trout time when it's colder water, easier to grow them, and then hold them again. And so we're going with an approach of just slowing them down a little bit, and it's working. I mean, the biggest fish we have right now, 1654, but we've seen fish in the past up to 17 pounds, 17.57.
Nice.
I mean, it is going to happen. And I do use Red Hills. I believe in the trophy marker stuff that they've worked on, because Texas Parks and Wildlife found the same things independently.
Yeah. Interesting. I that's an impressive place. I call it Dr. Evil's Bass Laboratory down there.
Yeah.
What strikes me though, when you say California, the first thing that strikes me is a temperate climate.
Mm-hmm.
It's not swinging as wildly as, say, South Georgia or East Texas. Like you said, the heat stress. They're maybe they're not getting it, especially in an 80-foot deep, 70-acre lake. You're going to be a place that fish can go to get away from that. One place, Kingsley, here just north of me. I'm in Central Florida. It's the perfectly round lake on the map for anybody who wants to look up Kingsley, and I believe it's on an Air Force base, and you have to get permission, but I'm not positive on that. But Jason Dotson was saying that that's one of the lakes in Florida they're experimenting with rainbow trout stocking.
Correct. Yes, it is. Yeah,
and that sounds like a very similar situation, although Kingsley's bigger than 70 acres.
Yeah, it is, and it's deeper too. Or right out as deep. Yeah, and I do think that there is a more than just a temperature variable there. Temperature becomes probably the key, especially when we're talking about climates like I live in. And so we have a lot of clients experimenting with supersaturating oxygen below the thermocline without breaking the thermocline. So instead of bottom diffusion aeration where you're circulating and getting a homogeneous water temperature, instead of doing that, what if you just put oxygen below it? Because whenever we have 95-degree surface temperatures, at 40 foot, we have 63 degrees. So can you just put oxygen down there? That's one of the things we're looking at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's and that follows in. I think what we're touching on here is what Hooking Up's asking to grow a big fish up north versus down south. And I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think you have to have the right balance. And I think that the thing that would hold you up north is a lot of times bass aren't top predators in those systems. Yep. So they've got a predator on top of them, which is going to shorten that lifespan. How do you get them to live, 10, 12, 15 years when you have tiger muskie?
Right. Yeah, I think also if you buy into them being a different species, you have largemouth bass in the north, you have Florida bass in the south. California, Texas, Arkansas now, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, we're Florida bass country.
Right.
When you get up north, all the research shows Florida bass will not live. Some of it even shows that they won't live like north of Tulsa, pure Floridas. I think that Florida component of genetic would make it easier to hit double-digit fish, but you would have to be allowed to stock some sort of integrate style fish to make it happen. I think that if we went back and did some genetic studies on some of the past, let's say, getting to 10 to 12 pounds isn't completely out of the question for a northern largemouth, but getting to 14 or 15 pounds, a genetic test on some of those fish, you might find that there was some funny business going on.
Yeah, I could see that. Totally. And I definitely wanted to touch on, before we get off, your role at MLF, Major League Fishing, and how you got into that. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, so it started in, I'm going to say 2013 is when it truly started. In 2013, I had a speaking contract with Cabela's. At the time, Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop were two different companies. Bass Pro hadn't bought Cabela's yet. Cabela's had wildlife biologists that were on staff employees, and they would travel the country and they would do seminars at the stores. But they had no fisheries biologist. And one of the wildlife biologists was in Abilene. And so he would often hire me to come do pond management seminars. So I would go around Cabela's, especially like when they would open a new store, if they were having like some sort of celebration, they would have seminars happen. So They happened to be opening a new store in Fort Worth, and no, they were coming out with their tractors. They were coming out with their tractors in Fort Worth, and they were launching that. So they're having a celebration weekend, and I was on the bill to do pond management seminars. Gary Klein was on the bill to do fishing seminars, and he's a Berkeley pro, and so Berkeley was paying him to be at the Cabela's and do fishing seminars. Well, nobody showed up, so Gary and I spent half the day just listening to each other talk, and and we had never met in person. We had, we followed each other on social media, but we had never met in person.
Yeah.
Because of that, we kind of hit it off. And I had just came back from our kids' camp, so I told him about that. We started talking about fisheries management stuff. We just became really good friends.
Yeah.
And he would come fish my clients' lakes, and do like an angler's kind of assessment of the lakes. I would put him on an electrofishing boat. He just was eating up with it.
Yeah.
And one day I was sitting on the couch, and Major League Fishing started. Their first event ever was in 2010. It aired in 2011. That was at Lake Amistad. And Gary is a co-founder of Major League Fishing. He came up with the entire format.
Right on.
So Gary and I were BSing in 2013 at Cabela's. We got to be really good friends. About 2016, I'm sitting on my couch watching Major League Fishing. Gary's fishing on the TV, and I text him. I was like, "Hey Gary, when your official weighs your fish, what happens next?" And it just started this conversation of, "Well, Stephen, the official sits down, he writes it on a piece of paper, then he puts it in the iPad. It's this app." And I was like, "What else does he put in the app?" And he starts saying, "I really don't know, but I can ask." He gives me a copy of the data. So here's what the data says. It says Gary Klein, 2 pounds, 12 ounces. And then it says caught in a creek on a boat dock. And then it has a timestamp and a GPS location. And it says in 5 foot of water on a wacky worm.
Wow.
And it says that for every fish.
Wow.
And I said, Gary, this needs to be in the hands of a manager.
Yeah.
This is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, put it together. What would it look like?" So in October of 2017, Gary and I drove to Tulsa, and we pitched Major League Fishing on what it would look like to basically just share the data.
Yeah.
And I put together a PowerPoint, and I proposed this question. Major League Fishing has arguably the best conservation message because of the catch, weigh, and immediate release format.
Absolutely.
But what would you do if all of your competition used the exact same format? Then what's your conservation message? And the leadership at that time was like, "I don't know. What would you do?" And so then we started having those discussions. And it took 2 additional years of market research. I don't move quickly with these kind of things.
Right.
We did market research on what was being done, how was conservation work, and the first thing that we got challenged with is there's not a true black bass population, largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass population that needs true conservation. Because conservation is kind of the restoration or restoring of a lost resource. And in most of these bodies of water, we have too many bass, not enough.
Right.
So we ditched the word conservation.
Right.
And we started talking about stewardship and becoming educated anglers and what that would mean and how we could work hand in hand with agencies. And we came up with 4 pillars of work. Those are education, number 1. Number 2 is research. Number 3 is fisheries enhancement. And I'm going to forget the 4th one, I'm sure. Let me think. Research, education, fisheries enhancement. Oh, fish care. Duh. Fish care.
Yeah.
Fish care.
Safe fish handling.
Obvious one. Yeah. So we started building out. Just the elements of what it would look like. Now today, I've done 22 projects in 7 states, major reservoir projects on places like Chickamauga, Lake Murray, Kentucky Lake, Grand Lake. And we use mossback fish habitat, so we use artificial habitat, but we do it to where we work with the agency biologist. We come up with a project scope. What are we trying to do? How are we trying to impact the fishery? And how are we going to measure success?
Mm-hmm.
We involve a corporate partner. Minn Kota is my number one corporate partner,
Nice.
along with Kubota. Kubota provides equipment at every single habitat project to where I can get the materials off the trailers into the volunteers' hands and onto the boats efficiently. It's huge to make that experience a positive one. We often use high school and college anglers to make it happen, so that we can get them to experience what fisheries management could be. We partner with a lot of colleges. One of the big projects we did was a research project looking at smallmouth bass in St. Lawrence. No, not St. Lawrence. Damn it, I'm gonna forget. Oh, it's Lake St. Clair. That's what it is. We looked at smallmouth bass in St. Clair, and these bass would have red lesions on their side.
Mm.
And the researchers in Michigan wanted to know what the causative agent of those lesions were. And they were partnering with angler groups. And so, because I have the ability to look at the data and see who is catching what, we trained our anglers on what to look for. And then we wrote a rule that during competition, if you catch a bass that has one of these lesions, you can put it in your live well and you could bring it back to us. And what the veterinary lab in Michigan found out was that was actually a mutation of largemouth bass virus in small bass. And now that we know that, like, that's a really cool project we got to be involved in.
That's
but
awesome.
Most of the projects we do are actually with agency biologists. We give that catch data after every single event. So over Major League Fishing's history, we've hosted 117 events. And so far, we've caught 137,000 fish.
Wow.
And they have GPS locations, weights, time, date stamp. I'll give you one example of how we're using it. In 2019, we hosted 2 events at Table Rock Lake, and we just announced that Red Crest will be at Table Rock this April coming up. But in 2019, we did our first event at Table Rock Lake, and we had 6,000 fish catches roughly. And then we were supposed to go to Grand Lake in Oklahoma, but it flooded. It was that year that it flooded so bad. And so we went back to Table Rock, and we had another 6,000 fish catches. So we handed Shane Bush 12,000 fish catches.
Wow.
And those 12,000 included like 4,700 largemouth and like 6,000 spotted bass, and then the rest, like the last 12,000 or 1,200 or 1,300, were smallmouth bass. And Shane took his electrofishing data and was matching that population data because there was so much of it. He's like, dude, the largemouth and the spotted bass are spot on. They match everything I have.
Wow.
And he said, but the smallmouth, your data overestimates smallmouth compared to my data. So then we took a map and we marked each fish catch, all 12,000 fish catches on a map.
Right.
And we color coded them for spotted bass, smallmouth, and largemouth. And there was one creek arm where all the smallmouth were caught. And Shane pointed at it and said, this is too deep to electrofish.
Right. You're missing
here. So now in all of the state reports for Table Rock, there is an equation to estimate smallmouth based on what we have.
That's amazing, dude. That, and more data is better data, and 12,000 fish. There's no way. I mean, people think that you're going to go see that with the electrofishing boat, man. You're not,
Yeah. So whenever we mapped all that, the other things I did, Shane has 3,000 brush piles
Yeah.
that they built on that body of water. So we mapped how far each fish. We did a heat map from how far they were to a brush pile, and then we overlaid topography, and we found that once we overlaid topography, depth was the most important part for those two events. The depth, the contour of the lake was the most important part. It wasn't
Structure
habitat related.
ledges, maybe.
I don't remember. I just remember that if you took all the fish away that weren't on it was like, I think it was the 15-foot contour mark.
Yeah.
You took all the other fish away, like that was where everything was caught. It was on 15 foot.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible, man. And what it's a testament to how I think Major League Fishing is the future, and how you're going to see everybody else shifting towards that when you can do that much work and use that data. I think all the data, if that was implemented when fishing tournaments were implemented, how much more data they would have.
Yeah, I mean, I often tell biologists, so kind of how my work with Major League Fishing starts is, so we announce a schedule, usually in the summer around ICAST, so July.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll announce a schedule of 7 or 8 events. And then the first thing I have to do is set a scoreable weight, because we want the anglers to only score legal fish. So we have to figure out, if the regulation says that's 14 or greater, what does a 14-inch fish weigh in that body of water? So I have to figure that out, so where I can then say, right, so in this event, you're going to get to weigh fish that are 1.5 pounds. And then next week, you're weighing fish that are 2 pounds or better. It'll depend on the fishery.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent an email to the agencies, and I'm always like, hey, can I get like the last 5 surveys that you did, and just send me the raw data. I've got a system. I put it in. It'll spit out what I need. And then what's the regulation? Is there anything we want to talk about? Do we want to do a habitat project? We include all that, but I need the data. And what I often find is that in our events where we were doing 6 days, we only do 4 now. We've condensed the field down. But in our past events, we would do 6 days of competition, and roughly in 6 days of competition, we would catch what's equivalent to about 10 years of sampling data for adult fish for most reservoirs.
Wow.
And we would have a skew towards those size classes that are harder to catch with electrofishing. You would see the 7, 8, 10 pound fish show up. Yeah, 2 pounds would be a pretty healthy 14-inch fish. But what if you had a 16-inch limit?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Nowadays we fish 4 days of competition with about 60 anglers. I could really quickly look it up, but we're talking like we had 17,000 fish catches this year over 9 events.
Wow.
So that's 1,900 basically per event.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great. I mean, that's a sample size that's not achievable, any other way, really. That's just really smart the way you did that, and I'm very impressed. And one thing that kind of you mentioned a minute ago, and we're going on an hour and a half, and I know you've got work to do. Largemouth bass virus. I wanted to touch on that, and maybe put some information out there about that, and then we're going to get off.
Yeah, whatever you need, Shan, I'm around. We can do it again. This has been fun. Largemouth bass virus really started like I would say the peak of it was in the 90s. Largemouth bass virus is basically more or less transferred by live well transmission and release boat transmission. So you take a fish, you put it in a confined space,
Mm-hmm.
and the virus spreads, and it hits our most popular reservoirs. Lake Fork, Lake Guntersville still has largemouth bass virus pop off periodically.
Mm-hmm.
We are seeing it in other species, including smallmouth and Alabama bass.
Mm.
It doesn't appear to cause mortality in the same way for those fish. So largemouth bass virus for largemouth often shows a mortality in an advanced sized fish, 4+ size fish, 4 pounds plus. Um, for smallmouth, it appears to be in juveniles, and then the adults will get lesions, but they don't necessarily have a mortality event. Um, but there's been several places like the Potomac where they've identified now that largemouth bass virus has came through the smallmouth bass population and caused mortality events in juveniles. So then you
Mm.
need either time or more recruit stocking or something to rebound that population. And
Mm-hmm.
that was part of Auburn's study on the Coosa River, is looking at it in Alabama bass and identifying what does it look like in Alabama bass. So it can affect other species, and we're just starting to scratch the surface on what that's looking like.
Right. What does it do exactly to the fish?
Well, for largemouth, it causes inflamed organs, and so you get, especially the liver will become inflamed, and then at some point it becomes fatal.
Yeah.
And it's not the entire population. It does appear that there are certain strains, including Florida bass, that seem to be more resistant.
Hmm.
And that as the virus comes through the population, they build up a natural immunity. So we think
Mm.
about Lake Fork. Lake Fork is now stocked with Florida bass at a high rate.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got natural immunity, and we haven't seen a largemouth bass virus kill in a long time. Lake
Interesting.
Guntersville, we have an integrated population. We still see largemouth bass virus popping off every 3 to 5 years. Not a whole reservoir fish kill anymore. It's usually isolated to certain areas. And we found the same thing whenever because of how we were doing it for Major League Fishing, whenever we were at St. Clair, I didn't not only know the angler that caught the fish, I knew where the fish was caught. And so then we were able to graph where those largemouth bass virus fish were coming from. And they were coming
Mm-hmm.
from similar areas together. So they were moving in a school together, which is obvious. The closer proximity those fish are to each other, the more likely they're going to transmit that virus. There
Yeah.
was a lot of research in the 90s looking at forage items, including crayfish as a carrier, and they found that crayfish can be a carrier of largemouth bass virus. But all research ended with the conclusion that this is more a human-induced issue because we confine fish to small areas. You think about if we have one fish that has a high viral load, it goes into a live well, it can infect 4 other fish. But we on especially the high-end professional leagues, we use live release boats, and so that fish is going to be intermingled with 300 other fish in a
Right.
larger tank. And if that now you have to have time in the tank as well. An
Okay.
8-hour day, 4 fish in a tank, that's a large viral load,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we're not recirculating water.
Mm-hmm.
More apt to transmit. You put it in a 300-gallon tank for 30 minutes, it doesn't have
Right.
time to spread the virus as easy. So you would need a secondary comorbidity to where, for whatever reason, that fish was injured. Maybe it was stressed. Maybe it had live well stress. Well, now that virus maybe finds a little easier pathway into that fish.
Sure.
But yeah, in the 90s, early 2000s, this was something we were super concerned with in the South. Um, for the most part, it's not as big of a concern here, but now we're seeing its impacts in other species.
Ah.
And it's very similar to like the koi herpes virus. It's burning through a population, then it'll kind of level state to where we have natural immunity.
Interesting. Well, my friend, like I said, it's going on a long one, and I know you're busy, and I can't
Yes,
thank you enough. That was one of the best lives I've ever had, and anything you ever need from me, you'll have. Thank you again, my friend.
Of course, brother. No, I really appreciate the invite. We're going to do it again.
Definitely.
Hopefully, I'll have something actually interesting to talk about next time, right?
Oh, man. You're a wealth of knowledge, my friend. Wealth.
Yeah,
All right,
no,
boys.
it's fun. It's fun, brother.
Yeah.
We'll actually talk pond management next time, right?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It sounds good to me.
I love watching the show. Keep it up. I think as frequent as you can be on spreading
Yeah.
the message.
Well, that was my
fisheries management.
thank you. That was my key to success at Instagram was overwhelm it, just bomb it. And I had a little bit of health issues there, but I'm coming back around feeling much better. I got diagnosed with alpha gall.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. And now that I'm not in a constant state of allergic reaction, I'm feeling much better. And I'm just going to overwhelm YouTube almost daily here with Fish Talks and bring people on. And it's already showing just in the short period of time that I've been doing it a lot of improvement.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. You got to get good at that, like, share, follow. You got to promote yourself.
Yeah.
I did the same thing, on Facebook, built an audience on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's, I wish somebody would have taught us in school where to devote our time. But media was just not in the curriculum. And, I do appreciate you doing this every night or as frequently as you can online, because it gives me something to listen to while I'm on the road. But it's sharing the information to the masses, and we got to keep that going.
I agree 100%, man. All right. Thanks again. And I'm going to get it off here. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow night. And that one.